Hello and welcome to the Dune Minute Podcast, your place to deep dive minute by minute into the cinematic adaptation of Frank Herbert's world of Dune. I'm one of your hosts, John.
And I'm Zach.
And we are back at it again for another week of Dune. How are you doing?
I am good. I'm good. I appreciate you starting a little bit earlier today. We're normally record around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, but we're a little bit earlier in the morning. So thanks for getting up before noon.
I am a late riser, but it's never too early for some Dune. We are back this week talking a little bit about our crawler that we ended with last week. So last week, the Atreides and Liet Kynes were out flying on an ornithopter out into the deserts of Arrakis to see the spice fields on which their livelihood depends.
That's right.
I believe I got that quote correctly. I panicked in the moment trying to scroll up in my notes to get it and didn't make it in time. So
sounds right to me.
We'll say that's good enough. Last week we talked about how the crawler was just on this big flat bed of sand, and we could see it was kind of making a zigzag path and everything through. We're starting this minute right out with just more overhead shots of the crawler, seeing its, size and everything, how it's working.
It's huge.
One thing I noticed though, so we were talking about the state of all of the machinery and everything that was left behind with the Atreides. They make a point to make this crawler sound super clunky and kind of like a cartoon car that's old as shit.
Yeah.
I don't think that's, accidental at all. And I don't think it's
Probably
just,
not.
some background noise. I think it's meant to show like, hey, this is a really old, shitty piece of machinery that they have to work with here.
It's clunky and creaky.
Yeah.
In the books, they mention, I think the name is Old Maria.
Old Maria is the name of the.
They have like a super, super old sand crawler because they've, as you know, it wasn't just the Harkonnens that were on Arrakis. There's been plenty of people before that.
Right.
And, technology of the harvesters, sand crawlers, harvesters, whatever you want to call them, has progressed. The image in the encyclopedia is basically like this big factory on treads.
Yeah.
With a giant vacuum in front of it.
I mean,
just to suck up the spice on the
sure. That's that's what it is.
It was, I don't know. It was kind of funny, but the book specifically mentioned that they've kept one of those like super old ones around.
Yeah.
And it's a pain in the ass to keep like to get working. And to maintain and everything. And the Harkonnens would use that as punishment for people. So if you fell into their bad graces, you got assigned to Old Maria.
Oh shit. That kind of reminds me, like the moment that you said Old Maria, in my head, I was thinking of like a World War II, like B-52 Sky Fortress or whatever.
Sure.
And there's like a pinup girl painted on it and on the side and everything. So there's just, in my head, I'm just imagining this giant vacuum cleaner with a pinup girl on this.
It's a pinup Bene Gesserit.
A pinup Bene Gesserit. Yeah. No, it's just a pinup Shai Hulud.
Yeah, you go. Yeah, but I did notice the creaks and you just hear just mechanical rubbings and
creaks and just loud banging noises and whatnot.
It's the jalopy of the sand harvesters.
And as they're flying over, Liet Kynes even points out that, everyone can see the spice scattered across the surface of the sands, and you can see all these darker patches and everything. We saw them a little bit at the end of last week's last minute, but we just get to see them more here. When
I was writing my notes, I was kind of having an internal struggle about when to talk about like spice production.
Yeah.
And not like human spice production, like how spice gets there in the first place. I'm going to hold off until maybe next movie. I'm sure we'll talk about it before then, but like it's much more of a,
you say that we're probably going to talk about it in like a week.
Right. It plays a much bigger part in the next movie, but I didn't say it today, but it was almost in the notes.
Well, I guess if you're gonna just drop a teaser like that, you're gonna have to stay tuned till 2025 to learn a little more. No, we'll definitely hit on it before then because it is important.
Yeah. These crawlers,
clearly the pacing across books and movies is very different. So
yeah. Well, and at this point in the books, there's only like speculations on how spices, where it comes from. They just think it's a natural resource on the planet.
Well, at this point in the books too, Paul doesn't know why spice is so important.
Nope.
So,
nope.
Meanwhile,
they just
in minute 6, I think it was, they're like, oh yeah, no, this is needed for a lot of shit.
Yeah.
You want to go anywhere? You need spice.
But yeah, we do see the spice on the surface. Those are those red splotches of color that we saw from the ornithopter. Real cool. Love it. As the ornithopters kind of come down around the harvester.
Yeah.
I really love this, the visual that we get with the sand kind of billowing out of the wash of the rotor blades.
Yep.
I know it's probably an easy thing or easy-ish thing to do in CG. It just looks so good. It looks so
No,
cool.
they do a really good. So like last week we talked about moments of not as good CG. And it's definitely hard to make, sand doing not natural sand things, work
We're using like
CG.
real life sand. It's almost impossible.
Yeah. So to see them, be able to kind of make that work is really cool. And, I was watching some of the extras that are available with Dune if you have the movie on Apple TV, and they have a whole section in there talking about how some of the visual designers went out into some desert in, it was either California or Arizona or New Mexico or something, with just like a bunch of different items and materials to see how sand reacts to different external forces. Nice. They went out there with like this large vibrating motor to kind of get an idea of what something rumbling across the top of a desert would look like. They then took that and then like buried it to see what something like coming up from the surface would look like that was rumbling. They did a lot of really cool experimentation and study on that kind of stuff. So if you have the movie on Apple TV, I would strongly recommend going and watching some of those extras.
Yeah, nice.
A lot of really cool behind the scenes stuff in there.
Good on them for doing the research. It paid off. Clearly it paid off.
Yeah, no, I mean, for a massive, multi hundreds of millions of dollars movie, I think sending someone out to the desert for a little bit, to do some research is a little important.
I think it's right here, but Leto kind of makes a banking turn in the ornithopter, and we see everyone kind of like jerk really like against the doors of the windows. Yeah. So I was like, is Leto a good pilot? I mean, I think he is. But
I think he's a good pilot. I just don't think like Paul has a lot of experience flying in ornithopters, and Liet Kynes probably doesn't have a lot of experience flying in ornithopters and stuff. I mean, I could be wrong. Liet Kynes could be a professional ornithopter pilot as well.
I have a little bit of experience behind the sticks of an ornithopter.
Yeah, with your Microsoft Flight Simulator?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it is tough. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like he's a very good one.
Yeah. Well, you just got to make sure that you're not overworking your heart-shaped mollusks. So, Dr. Kynes suggests that the group climb an elevation to get a better view of the spice itself. And we see Leto kind of pull up a little bit and begin to gain some elevation. Mm-hmm. As they are climbing upwards, we start to see some of the spotter aircraft, which I think are really cool. They're little, almost like 1960s, 1970s era looking satellites that are just kind of floating around over the.
Yeah, it's kind of like Sputnik, but without the arms.
Yeah, without the antenna and everything. And I was looking at them, and it's like, I don't see any kind of obvious like method of propulsion or anything. So maybe it's like some weird gravitational thing or whatever.
Well, the ornithopters are the only things that we've seen that do have an obvious method of like
That's not true.
engines.
We've seen the carryalls.
But they were floating before the balloons deployed. So they're whatever same like source of power. It's probably the same that the spotters are using.
I don't think so, and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes.
Okay, all right,
in a couple episodes, because I've figured out how the carryalls work.
Oh, okay.
Tune in on Thursday, I think. Yeah, Thursday for that one.
Okay.
But nonetheless, we get introduced to the spotter aircraft.
Yeah,
and I feel like they're probably sized enough for one person, so there's probably just one person sitting in it flying around.
Yeah.
However, it is possible that they could just be little drones that are being controlled from the crawler itself. I'm of the mindset that there's someone inside of them.
That is how it's portrayed in the books.
Okay.
Like there are people inside of it. I think we're led to assume that in the movies too, just because we hear radio chatter from them. But then again, that could just be a remote operator somewhere.
Yeah, all the chatter that we hear is from the perspective of inside the ornithopter. So who knows?
Yeah. I'm gonna put my money in that there's someone in there piloting them.
Yeah. Dr. Kynes goes on to explain that worms normally travel deep beneath the sands, but as they begin to rise up to attack because they don't like vibrations and rhythmic noises, which guess what? That's exactly what the crawler is.
Yep.
That's why the spotters are there.
Yeah.
Gurney Halleck just says worm always comes, and Kynes' only response is always.
Yep.
They're drawn by rhythmic noises.
To me, the spotters, we can move on after this. I drew two analogies.
Okay.
One, they just look like little like table tennis ping pong balls flying through the air.
Yep.
They just, little white balls just kind of, scooting around. The other one, this is not to bring up Star Wars, but in Attack of the Clones, I believe it is, at the very end, when we see the big battle between the droids and the clone army.
Yes.
They have those like globe things launching up from the ground. It looked very similar to those. I think that's what's in the center of the droid control ships. Those things launching up. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's what they are. They just look very similar to those things. Probably not as big, but the design is reminiscent of those.
So are you implying that in turn Dune is then stealing from Star Wars?
I don't know. Well,
because Star Wars stole from Dune.
So. Yeah, but the prequels were not even like conceived of until the 90s. So yeah, this would probably be another case of some shared design between the two.
Yeah. Before we end this episode, I'd like to go back to your biggest complaint about Arakeen.
Okay.
Because now we have an explanation for why you hate Arakeen in this movie, specifically the shield wall, because of the constant vibrations of the.
Did I have this gripe?
Yeah, you did, because you talked about how in the books Arakeen is in the middle of a giant mountain range itself.
Yeah. Whereas
here we just have like. It's surrounded on three sides, but then it's open on that fourth. And then there's the shield wall that Thufir Hawat brings up. And how you're like, that's bullshit, because if it was an actual shield.
Right, no, we've talked about how I think it's also depicted here that it's a mountain range. There may be like a little swatch of a desert in front of the city, but we don't see.
It's not a little swatch.
I'm saying
open.
Comparatively. Oh, okay. I didn't remember I had that gripe.
Yeah.
I'm such an easygoing guy. I just forget about all this stuff.
Yeah. No, that was a gripe that you definitely had.
Okay.
But now we get the explanation from Dr. Kynes that shields are
a death sentence.
Not a good thing to have. Yeah.
Shields are a death sentence in the desert.
Yes. And that's where our minute ends.
It ends right there. So I'm going to do something this week, a little bit different. And if I like it, I'll keep doing it.
Okay.
I'm just going to give you like book comparisons kind of at the end in like a condensed form.
Okay.
Just because we're, especially in these, like this set that we're doing, this week. And then, you know, in the next couple of weeks, they're like some pretty action packed minutes.
Yep.
I want to see, you know, how are they portraying this in the movie versus how they're portraying it in the book. But I don't want to like just sprinkle it in like bullet point by bullet point. I'm kind of just going to get it all out at once because we're moving pretty quickly. Sure. Through these, this scene here. So happy to report that they are following the story from the book very closely. Yep. With this scene here. A few minor differences that we see. The Kynes has a lot more dialogue, in this section than we get in the movie. So in the book, they have a lot more dialogue than they have in the movie. Sure. Maybe that was filmed and cut. I don't know, but it was, basically explaining what a planetologist does. At this point, we're kind of left to wonder a little bit or like infer what they're doing.
Kind of. Yeah. In defense of the movie, I would assume that everyone else knows what a planetologist does. Yeah. Because, you know, Paul and Gurney aren't uneducated people.
Yeah. And it's
Leto isn't uneducated.
Right. And it's not super important for the story they're telling. Yeah. To know the you know, the fine details and all the areas that Kynes researches on the planet. Sure. It is important for the books, but it's not super important for the movie. So I get why they left it out.
Dr. Kynes is out doing the traffic report right now from the ornithopter. Yeah.
Yeah. They go into like the different plant life that, they study, how the climate has been altered, on the planet since they've been doing this. And, you know, their father has been doing this.
Which in the movie we got during the, hunter seeker scene.
Yep. So we got a little bit of that. Yep. They also talk a lot about worms, about the worms in this section. Okay. So they go into, well, mainly like, here's how we've tried to kill them in the past. And, here are the different ways that we've actually, been able to not capture a live one, but kill one and preserve it so they could study it. So that was an interesting piece. Okay. But I, again, understand why they didn't do that. That would completely ruin the mystery and and the surprise of the cool shit we're about to see.
Yeah, we're not going to see it this week, but next week is our first actual introduction to Shai-Hulud. Spoilers, by the way. Yeah. But
and during this scene in the book, before they actually get to the sandcrawler, or as they're approaching it, Paul asks just very point blank. He goes, "Is there a connection between the sandworms and spice?" And Kynes is like, "I don't know."
I actually do, but I'm not telling you.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the first inkling that we get in the books of there being a connection between the worms and spice.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but other than those things, we're like a lot of the dialogue is the exact same. The story beats and how the scene plays out in the movie is exactly how we see it, read it in the book. Yeah. So yeah, good job, them. Good job.
Good job to the screenwriters and everyone that's worked on the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is all I had for this one.
Yep. Next episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about worms and the desert. So feel free to come on back tomorrow as we continue our discussion of just go ahead and cut that.
You know how we've kind of standardized the intro?
Yeah.
We've not really standardized the outro.
No, we
ever.
have not at all.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, that's it for today's episode. But feel free to come on back tomorrow. But before you do that, feel free, if you haven't done so already, to rate the show. Give us any kind of comments that you want. You can reach out to us on Instagram at the Dune Minute, on Twitter at Dune Minute, or you can email duneminute@gmail.com. And also share this podcast with any of your friends that you think might be interested in it. We're seeing a lot of really good growth, and to all of our listeners, we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And hope you love listening to this as much as we love recording.
Absolutely. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you later.